Hi everyone, this little video is going to be about the angle finder jig that I've made, the version 7, which is this little guy here, which I use in conjunction with the McNaughton Center Saver, like these guys here, which have lovely curved blades. This helps you figure out the precise angle in which to set the system up so that you get perfectly even walled thickness bowls when you're center saving. So I've got myself a little piece of oak here, which is only a tiny piece but will be quite sufficient to show you how this jig is used. Obviously I've just roughed out the profile and left a nice solid tenon on there, which will probably turn into a nice footed bowl shortly, but let's just have a look. Yep, that's running not far from true. So what we need to do, let's just get rid of that, is the three things we need to do to use the jig to start with is just to take measurements of what the total diameter of the bowl is. This one is, what do we got, 216, and the total depth of the bowl is pretty much bang on 70 mil. So that's what we need to know from that. The next thing you also need to do is just to grab the different curved blades and double check which one is the correct curve to use for this particular bowl. And for this little guy, the most curved one, which I've labelled as red, it will be the most appropriate for this bowl. This next little part of what to do is quite a lot different from what I needed to do with my previous jig, and is a lot faster because of it. Previously I used to spend a lot of time marking out on the profile of the bowl where the lines, the starts of the cuts needed to be, as well as lines on the profile. Now all I need to do is enter the diameter of the bowl, the depth of the bowl, along with the code, the colour code of the different blade I want to use, into a little Excel spreadsheet that I have made, and it spits out the answers of where to start each cut and on what angle to correctly set the jig at to get the cuts happening in the right place to the right depth. The Excel sheet that I have made up runs on Google Documents, which means that you can view it on anything from a computer to a smartphone to an iPad. For this particular example, I have borrowed my lovely wife's iPad from upstairs to show you, as it's a little bit bigger than my iPhone, which I normally use, but you can of course use a computer or anything else you like. You don't even really need to have it accessible in your workshop. You can just stuck upstairs, punch in the details, get the results and come back with the results written on a piece of paper, and that works just fine. What you need to do is go in and change what the blade is. So we've just colour coded this to go R for red. The bowl diameter, you need to just jump in there and put in this particular bowl was 215. Hopefully you can see this as I go. The bowl height was 70. And we also have options where you can set what your wall thickness is, which often is on 10% if you want to be bowl saving wet wood and leaving it to dry. Because I will be turning these bowls I'm producing today to finish rather shortly, I'm making them a little bit thinner, so I'm leaving that at 5%. There's also an option there to have an extra thick bottom, just to allow for the sprockets that you need to turn later on. Otherwise I find that they can get a little too thin. But once you've entered that details there, it then produces the results over here on the right hand side, which gives me details. The first cut is 16mm in from the edge of the bowl. The next cut is 34mm in from that edge of the bowl. I'll probably only get 2 cuts and 3 bowls out of this blank because it is only a small piece. And it also shows me that the bowl cut angle at the bottom here needs to be 28 degrees for the first bowl and 47 for the second bowl. So let's go have a little play at setting up the jig, and I'll show you how that happens. So taking that information from the Excel sheet, I can then go back to the bowl. I find the tool rest helps a little bit at this stage. Grab a pencil, grab a ruler. Now we were looking at the first cut being 16mm in, so let's just get this going slowly here. 16mm is there. The second cut was going to be at 34mm in from the edge, which is there. Nice and easy so far. So the next thing we need to do is get rid of this tool rest, throw in the McNaughton Center Saver jig, lovely solid hunk of metal. Now this is where this jig really comes into play, is in the positioning of this so that you're in exactly the right place for making these cuts. Now when it comes to using this jig, first thing we need to do is to make sure it is set up for, in this case, the correct blade, which is the red blade. So to do that you just simply take off this little nut, which, sorry, I'm going to do out of camera at the moment so I don't drop it in the sawdust. You then simply pull that out, shift it along to the correct red hole, pop it back through and pop the wing nut back on top again. Hey presto! Now the next thing to do is to set it up for the correct angle for the first cut. Now I will actually cut the inside bowl first and then the outside one. That way we can maintain it in the nice big tenon of the outside bowl throughout the process. And so the inside cut was, according to the Excel spreadsheet, 47 degrees. So just loosen that off, slide this around to 47 degrees, which I can see here on the roll. Tighten that up, and then all we need to do, there's 2 holes in the base of the jig here. They slot over the 2 holes of the jig, the 2 that you typically slide the blades in between. Obviously that depends on what blade set you're working with. So let's have a look at this. Now what happens is I need to get the straight edge of this jig lined up with the flat edge of the front of the bowl, and the tip, the sharp edge of the jig there, pointing straight at the first line where it's going to be cutting. So let's just have a look. That's actually pretty good right there, nice and easy. So all I do is lock that in place, take that off, and we will be ready once I put the handle onto this to put it in place and start the cutting process. So let's get that sorted. So let's get some hollowing happening. So what's this? That's spinning about 900 RPM, which is so this oak is a little bit dusty, so I'm just going to go throw my air hood on. So we don't have to breathe all the dust. I get the feeling I may not be running quite at centre there. Yep. There we go. So there's the first little one come out. This one done. What happens is you now go back to the jig. It's obviously already set at the red bowl. So I just need to change the cut angle to the first one which the Excel sheet gave me, which is what, 28 degrees, which is right there. Tighten that up, go and put that back on top of the jig. And we're doing the same thing again. We're just looking at getting it set up so that that front edge is parallel with the front of the bowl. That looks pretty good to me, so lock it all down nice and tight. Obviously that still turns, but believe it or not, that does not seem to matter. And then once again, we should be in the right place to start that next cut. So we'll get on to that in one sec. So, just put a bit of beeswax on the blade, which just helps it run a little bit more fluid. And we should be good to go. I'll try and stay out of the way this time so that you can see what's going on. So there we go, I'm turning oak for the very first time, and looks like turning such a thin piece is not good for oak since it seems to have shattered out the edge. Not the best example, but we'll just carry on. Now obviously that bowl might just have to have a bit more of a natural edge by the time I'm done with it. It's all good, so let's just, the outside bowl looks perfectly fine, so I'll carry on. So, an ugly little bowl, but I'm sure I'll clean that up. But as for a nice fin bowl, that's pretty good, and that one's nice as well. So here we go, that's what the angle finder jig is all about, producing nice even wall thickness bowls without the stress of worrying about going right through the bottom of your bowl or just second guessing yourself through the process of the hollowing. I'll grab some calipers. Hopefully you might be able to see the end over here as I drag it up through there. It's not too bad, even wise all the way along, and the little bowl, even though it's got broken out tops here which doesn't look pretty at all, you'll have to trust me, is nice and even on its thickness as well. So that's the little angle finder jig I have created. You'll be pleased to know, if you are interested, I am only a couple days away from also releasing another short video on how to create your own angle finder jig, including sharing with you the Excel spreadsheet which you can just copy, download onto your own computer or phone to work out the calculations, or you can also make the previous angle finder jig which lets you do it all manually by looking at the bowl with no computerized component required, depending on what suits you best. Thanks for watching. So now I can get on with some real turning. And here is the resulting 3 little bowls from one little piece of wood. Lovely.